We'll start, though, with criticism of the Middlesex County Cricket Chair, Dr Mike O'Farrell, for comments made to Parliament which have been described as outdated racial stereotypes. A group of county chairs, along with the England and Wales Cricket Board, have been updating MPs today on progress in the sport since Azim Rafiq's accusations of institutional racism at Yorkshire. Rob Dorsett has been watching the hearing in Westminster and joins us again now. Rob, good afternoon. So Mike O'Farrell's comments have drawn immediate criticism. Just give us some context. What's happened?
Yeah, well, look, these comments stood out, I think, in a particularly lively DCMS Select Committee hearing, and they were surprising and they were controversial when Dr Mike O'Farrell, the chairman of Middlesex, was asked about the lack of diversity amongst youngsters coming through in the sport. Have a listen to exactly how he responded to that question.
The football and rugby world becomes much more attractive to the Afro-Caribbean community. And in terms of the South Asian community, there is a moment where we're finding that they do not want necessarily to commit the same time that is necessary to go to the next step, because they prefer, not always saying they do it, they sometimes prefer to go into other educational fields, and then cricket becomes secondary. And part of that is because it's a rather more time-consuming sport than some others. So we're finding that's difficult. Now that's changing with the 2020 sort of sport and the one-day games.
So that was what Mr O'Farrell said, the Middlesex chair, and there were real echoes, you have to say, of what Greg Clark, the FA chair, said in front of that very same committee in November 2020. Those comments, along with some others from Greg Clark, ultimately cost him his job. And these comments from Mr O'Farrell have generated some pretty expected responses, I think you have to say, from people on social media. Have a look what Azim Rafiq said. And of course, Rafiq is the man whose harrowing testimonies of racism at Yorkshire started this whole process within the ECB as well. He's tweeted to say, "This has just confirmed what an endemic problem the game has. I actually can't believe what I'm listening to. Hashtag give me strength." And Ebony Brainford-Brent took to Twitter as well, director of women's cricket at Surrey. She, of course, is the first black woman ever to have played for England. She said, "Honestly, these outdated views in the game are exactly why we are in this position. Unfortunately, the decision makers hold on to these myths. The black community only like football and Asian community only interested in education. Seriously, the game deserves better," says Rainford-Brent. Now, on Sky Sports News in the last hour, we heard from the Kick It Out chief executive, Tony Burnett. They are combining with the ECB with new funds now to try and help the sport deal with issues of diversity in the game, shall we say. And Tony Burnett said of Mr O'Farrell's comments that, again, they play to racial stereotypes that are outdated.
We base our decisions and we base our plans on fact, and I'd love to see the data that backs up those comments, really, to suggest that black and Asian young people go into different sports for those reasons. You know, we need to find the facts, and the only way we find facts about why people are not getting into sports is by asking the questions of the relevant communities, not by listening to stereotypes and other ideas that are often drawn out of years of just bias and stereotype views.
So, Rob, these comments obviously taken over the news agenda today, but what else has happened between the participants and the MPs?
Well, Mike, this was an important update from the ECB in front of some difficult questions from MPs. They're going to do this every quarter, so 4 times every year, to update MPs and the country now on how cricket is going to deal with the lack of diversity and these issues of racism within the game. And they were given a hard time again. Tom Harrison, the chief executive of the ECB, was really brought to task by Julian Knight, the chair of the committee, because Tom Harrison outlined some of the targets that the ECB have now set in place, one of which was to increase the number of boys and girls from ethnically diverse backgrounds playing grassroots grassroots cricket to 30% by the end of the year. And Julian Knight pounced in at that point and said, hang on, you're already saying that it's at 28% right now, so your new target is just 2% more in the next 12 months. That doesn't fill me with confidence, Mr. Knight said. Mr. Harrison defended those targets, but also said, we understand the scale of the task that lies ahead. We have a huge bond of trust to create with communities right across this country who feel let down. So he's convinced that the ECB understand the scale of the problem. Other targets they've set, they're having a game-wide census to find out how people identify, to see if there are any underrepresented groups. The ECB also have a new target of 2,000 female South Asian activators, they call them, to help engagement with that particular part of the community, and they're building new urban cricket centres as well. But all of that, I think you have to say, laudable as those aims are, got a little bit lost because of those comments from the Middlesex chairman, and that's what you'll see on the newspaper headlines tomorrow. It's what we'll be talking about an awful lot more throughout the day on Sky Sports News as well.
We absolutely will. Rob Dorsett, thank you very much for the moment.